2 is here. Beyond 2D.
Ooh, ooh. You know what? I'm glad that you used that with me with no beard, just in case I shave. I like that. I might
Well, now I'm
change
gonna
up.
go change it.
No. Leave that one in there. I might go back to that.
I love it.
Season 3.
No, I disagree. Do not recommend.
No, my daughter said the same thing. She's like, "Dad, don't shave that. Don't." I'm like,
Don't do it. It's a
"You're used
wisdom.
to it."
It's a wisdom thing.
I know, but still, I'd be on the edge
Especially
of
when
it.
it starts to get a little salt and pepper. You
Well,
know.
yeah, okay.
Enough
Oh,
about Farron's face today. Welcome to season 2 of Beyond 2D. Let me tell you, my friend, how much I have been looking forward to coming back with you. You know, because my other 2 shows have already premiered for the season, and I have great guests that come on and everything, but it's just me, and I appreciate somebody to go back and forth with here down the
I
rabbit hole.
I appreciate you too, because sometimes I do my show Han Solo, and it's like, I'm just gonna be a talking head,
Anyone,
I guess.
anyone,
I don't want to be
you
a
were.
talking head. I want to be a talking head, like,
I know it. Well, we have quite the undertaking ahead of us as we begin season 2 here. For the next 4 episodes, we are going to be discussing grief and what a literally no pun like a heavy topic
yeah,
this is going to be, but I want you guys to know that I think Farron and I are both really committed to this topic because we both lived it and are still living it and
yeah.
experiencing it on a day-to-day basis. This week we're going to be discussing defining grief. Next episode we'll be discussing the stages of grief that which I can't wait for that, to be honest with you. Number 3, the third episode, we're going to be talking about grief support. Where can we find support? How can we be a support to ourselves? Which will ultimately lead into the 4th episode, which will be talking about transforming grief into growth. And I have a real powerful testimony for that with myself. And I know Farron's got so much to share about this as well. So
For
I think it's
sure.
going to be good.
Oh, you said it though. It's a heavy, heavy discussion, but it's one that none of us escape.
Mm.
No one
We don't.
escapes this. We don't
We
escape
don't.
it.
That's
So
true. That's true.
I
Brittany's excited that season 2 is here.
what's up?
Grief into growth, that hits. That's why we're not doing that till week 4. You're welcome.
We gotta build up to that one right there.
Yeah. Let's get to know each other first. Go out to
Yes.
dinner, maybe buy each other some flowers.
Yes. Applebee's, Cheesecake Factory. I'm good with that. I'm a cheap date.
Here it
But
is. You learn.
I don't know if
things
this
here.
I don't know if this fits, but just to set the tone of this defining grief, I had my grandson it was last week, and we were at my house jumping around. He's playing, I'm looking at him, and I said to myself, like, I felt this emotion that one day I'm not going to be here for him. And I was like, man, like, and I went there, not for me, but for how was he going to feel? Yeah. Right. And it was just like, oh, and then we continued to play because I wanted to be with him in that moment of all the fun that we were having, watching TV and playing, and like valuable.
Yeah.
So heavy.
Yeah, it is a heavy topic. And I will be honest with you, the topic itself, not even a specific experience, facing my own mortality, like you're talking about, and things like that, they'll just hit me at the most random times.
Don't
and
they?
I'll be like, I thought we were having a good time here.
Don't they? Like, what
is
from?
this? What What's up, Danielle? It's good to see you this evening. So listen, let's do what we always start out doing here and get into the little actual dictionary.com busy
Oh, here
belt.
we go.
We're going to start there
Dictionary.com.
with grief. And I'm actually, I went down a little mini rabbit hole doing this research over the last 24 hours. Okay. So the first definition, grief as a noun, keen mental suffering or distress over affliction or loss, sharp sorrow, painful regret. Number two, a cause or occasion of keen distress or sorrow.
I like the noun.
Those are some big words.
Mm.
And I think suffering is an interesting one for me because I think in my personal definition, there is a possibility that we can have grief without suffering.
That'll be in episode number 4.
Yeah.
That'll be in number 4 for sure. And I agree. I already and only because of the work that I've done, through my grieving journey. But I agree with you that.
So, and I want to briefly mention grief as a verb. Now, this grief as a verb.
I got the noun. I like the noun before you go.
Okay, go ahead.
So what sticks out? No, what sticks out to me in the noun definition is distress over affliction or loss, right? But affliction, right? Affliction stands out to me because I have sickle cell. I was born with sickle cell trait, this inherited gene. That episode I had was an affliction with my gene. Like I grieved in what happened to me in a different aspect of not, in the loss, but also in the loss because it triggered my health condition to get medically retired out of the service. Right. But what I learned when I started studying afflictions, sometimes we're born with them, sometimes they're in our environment. Sometimes watching too much CNN and Fox News, like there's different kind of afflictions, right, that could create that sense of loss or grief. Because I do believe we use it out of context as well. Sometimes we don't need to use the word grief; it's something else, right? But we label it as grief. But that stood out to me. Afflictions, very, very important for us to understand that word and what it looks like in our life as well. So I like that affliction definition in that.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be. I think when a majority talk about grief, that we're talking about the loss of a person in their physical body, right? And it doesn't have to be that. I've experienced immense grief over health things like you're talking about, loss of a physical thing that I might have had in my possession, a pet we were talking about before the show and everything as well. So it doesn't have to be something that's like, it could even be something that still exists, the grief of a friendship.
Exactly.
A marriage.
Exactly.
All of these different things. And there's a couple personal definitions that we'll get to after our friend dictionary here that we'll talk about as well. But I do want to touch really quickly on the verb. Now, the verb for grief is typically only used in the online space. So we're talking about grieving, used in grieving in like a game situation. So what it means in the verb is to behave in an unsportsmanlike way or take pleasure in antagonizing others. And the only reason I wanted to bring this up is because of something that we're going to touch on in part 4 after we go out to dinner and exchange flowers and all of that and get to know each other a little bit better here. And I just want you guys to, as we're talking about this topic of grief, ask yourself how much you're willing to antagonize yourself. I'm just gonna and we'll come back to it. That's all.
It made me think about good grief, Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
Antagonizing, how they antagonize Charlie Brown so much.
Yes. Yes, but how much in your grief journey, how much are you willing to antagonize yourself? And we're gonna circle back. We're gonna listen.
Yeah.
We're out to dinner right now. No point in
Stick a
going
pin.
and talking about that yet.
Stick a pin right there because
Yeah.
that's later.
Yeah. But
Woo!
the other thing I want to talk about, so my other friend, you as you know, is thesaurus.com, which talks about
Oh, the thesaurus.
match, words that match grief. And there was
Some
a couple of these.
context. Some context to this.
There was a couple of these that pushed me right down today.
Really?
Agony, anguish,
Mm,
bereavement,
mm.
despair,
Oh, despair.
discomfort, gloom,
Mm,
heartache,
mm.
heartbreak,
Yep.
melancholy,
Ah,
misery,
yes.
mourning, pain, regret, remorse, sadness, sorrow, trouble, unhappiness, woe, and worry.
Yeah, so pick one. I see at least about 7.
The one I'll tell you, the one that got me was unhappiness.
Really? How so?
Mhm. Because, well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, because of what we're not going to talk about today, and we're saving for the
Oh,
fourth show.
okay, that one.
But the one that we can talk about now is what I was talking about before, about the ability to grieve, but also experience things like joy and peace and
Oh yeah,
love
for
and
sure.
happiness and all of those things. What's your thoughts on that?
Um, despair definitely got me because I believe in the experience of that grief, there's a sense of hopelessness. There's a sense of despair that comes with that emotion, that feeling. And so definitely despair sticks out for me like right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That that word, and I could throw you that quote before, from Anne of Green Gables about despair. Do you remember me
Yeah.
talking about that?
Yeah.
And Danielle and Brittany are collectively rolling their eyes right now in the audience, because there's so many good quotes from this movie. But this is what's going to happen, girls. We're going to watch this movie together that you guys have never seen, and you're going to be like, I've
Oh,
heard every line in this movie. Thanks to Jessica. Thanks so much. But there's a moment when Anne says, she's so dramatic, and she's like, I'm in the depths of despair, and Marilla says to her, what does that, and she says, haven't you ever been in the depths of despair? And Marilla turns to her very sternly and she says, no, because to despair means to turn your back on God.
ooh,
So that was a moment. It was a
yeah.
moment. And it makes you think, this topic of grief also really brings me into thinking about my faith as well.
Mhm.
And what happens
Is
after.
that episode 4 too?
There's a lot. There's a lot coming. Um
You
on the
should have did
flip
4
side,
first.
yeah. On the flip side, the antonyms for grief: advantage, blessing, cheer, comfort, contentedness, contentment, gladness, good health, happiness, health, joy, joyfulness, peace, pleasure, relief, and satisfaction. So that's
I
the,
think we're here, you and I are here by no mistakes in the making
yeah.
because ultimately in our spirituality, right, is joy. Joy in the Lord, right?
Mm,
And it's not happiness. So when you said unhappiness, it made me think back to joy because if you're unhappy, happiness is tied to our circumstances. Like if you
mm,
really get where your happiness comes from, an outside force, you can go in and out of happiness any time of the day. Like you're happy 1 second, one phone call, one text, I'm unhappy. But joy is totally different experience of yourself because
mm,
your joy is not in the circumstances, it's in your belief outside of,
right.
all inside of you but outside of you at the same time. So just understanding for me just last couple of months, rediscovering how my happiness is connected to circumstances you can be free from the circumstances and still have joy in the midst of that storm.
Right.
And that's part of that grieving process is how to have joy in the midst of the circumstances around you. And it's tough to separate because there's such a fine line. Because
Right.
we look to happiness for so much stuff outside of us. So
Right.
I appreciate that. You said
And I talked about that in the beginning. The very first episode this season of Project Joy Live, my business card, as a matter of fact, used to say "Joy is your choice" on it, because I really do believe that there is a choice to be made. But as this is season 5 of Project Joy, as time has gone on with that show and my own transformation throughout the process of hosting that program, is that joy is who you are. The choice is whether or not you're going to tap into that. And
yes.
so now, like, I literally, as soon as I had that light bulb moment, I changed my business card. My business card now says "Joy is who you are." And that's what that's the point of the show now. Is it's who you are. Are you going to wake up and tap into that today?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're going to do? Brittany said discomfort stood out to me the most because it had me reflecting on all of the times of discomfort I have experienced in my life.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful that we give out the different definitions because again, sometimes we use the words out of context. And that's what I love about this show because it allows me to express that part of learning that like our language and context is so important about how we talk because it could really impact our feelings and emotions because that's what we're talking from. We're talking
Right.
from our feelings and emotions. So
Right.
yeah.
So I asked the question on my Facebook page this morning, what is your personal definition of grief? Do you want to share ours first, or do you want to hear other people's
No,
first?
let's hear the other people's
Okay.
first.
And for any of you that you don't know me on social media and didn't chime in on that post, if you're listening right now, I would love for you to share in the comments, what is your personal definition of grief? What does grief mean to you? I would love for you to share that in the comments as we're sharing some of these others as well. My friend Lynn said it's a process. In the beginning, complete sadness over the loss. Then, as time goes, it lessens to really missing what you lost, to remembering good times and moving on. You never really forget, and sometimes the grief still creeps in. I am not sure how else to explain it. You can grieve over losing a person to death or a broken relationship, your life not going in the direction you wanted, a pet, your health taking you down, or even a job. Everybody goes through the process differently. So Lynn really summed up, a lot of what we were saying in the beginning, that it really
Yeah.
is. It's not just about the death of a person. Grief, we could grieve anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, mine right off the top, even after reading that one, I almost can pinpoint it and that grief is about me is it makes me question my self-worth, my self-value
Mm.
at the end of the day. When I look at the things that I've been in these grieving stages, it makes me look at my self-worth. That's what it is for me is what I make that grief mean about me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can, yep. Yeah, no, I just um one of the things that I have shared, so when we get to week 4, I will share with you more and further about this topic. But my brother died when he was 24 years old, melanoma, and we ironically were already in Connecticut when he died because my grandfather died just the week prior. We were going up to my grandfather's funeral when my brother died.
Mm.
And so we had been going back and forth to Yale to visit my brother. And when we first got there, they were like, everything's gonna be fine. He's young, he's a fighter,
Yeah.
it's great. And he was gone a week later. But we went to my grandfather's funeral, and then went to the reception. And on the way to the reception, I got a call, your brother's not going to make it through the day.
Mm.
And so we started driving over to Yale, and I walked in the room. Literally, my brother took his last breath, and I walked into the room.
Mm.
And the story that I have told about this is that I collapsed into the chair, and immediately it was like a movie playing in my mind of my life, not my brother. And I had a long period of guilt and grief over that. But I think what happened is he was 24 years old. I was 4 years older than him. And now I had lost friends and things that were younger than this prior to this instance, but this obviously was my brother. It's real close
Right.
to home.
Oh yeah.
But I was playing this reel over and over and over again in my head of my life and what the hell are you doing with it?
Oh yeah.
And it was a real wake up moment. And then it hit in, oh God, I just lost my brother.
Yeah.
That's
why I said we question. It makes you question.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That could be an insight for somebody to look from. How we live in that grief so much, because we've now. I mean, I'm telling you, as soon as my dad was gone, I questioned my whole in that moment. Like that's where my mind went. He's gone. I'm done. It's over.
Yeah.
And that was my next thought to myself. So I believe as we talk about these conversations the next 4 times, that we hope that you find some peace or begin to discover some peace.
Yeah, absolutely. I am. So Linda, who I know lost her husband a few years back, she said described grief as being life altering, heart wrenching, soul changing, and unwanted, overpowering sadness. Somehow, some way, we move through it, but it never leaves us completely. Grief can also change our perspective on life and what truly matters. If something or someone isn't loving and nurturing you, toss it. I think it does. It can. Grief can really change your perspective on other things. Grief doesn't just change the thing that's gone. It changes what continues to go on.
Yes, all of it. All, like I said, my dad, my grandfather, and then my dog.
Yeah, I remember that trifecta.
Right, that's like the trifecta.
Yeah,
and it was like I recognize. I don't even know if I really even grieved my grandfather, right? Because it was a pandemic. It was all this other stuff. But then I also could say he was 90, so his 88th birthday, I think I made peace with him. We had a long talk. I recorded the conversation because I knew he had some nuggets. And so I want to say I didn't grieve as much as I did when he was 90, when he passed, because I already kind of felt that loss coming. And I want to say I also made peace with it. And then when I made peace with it, the station that I was going to was not far from his house. So I would come to LA and didn't feel right going past his house, right, to not see him. So then I would stop. I told myself, no, he's still alive, so continue to see him. So I was able to go by the house, maybe an hour before my show or so, sit with him. He was dealing with his mind, so he'd ask me the same questions like 15 times and stuff, but just to be in his presence, because he was still alive. But I felt I had already kind of checked out.
right.
Going past his house, I couldn't like that's your grandfather. Like, how can you not stop by and say hi? Yeah. And so I started doing that, and maybe that's why it didn't hit me as hard as it was unexpected with my dad. So maybe that's kind of why.
Yeah.
And the whole
Um,
spiritual piece. I mean, he's a pastor, and so there was a whole spiritual piece
yeah,
connected to
yeah.
that too, right?
That's interesting that you say that, because there was that when my grandmother passed away as well, because she was a Eucharistic minister in our church, um and there was a huge spiritual part to that, for sure. Um so Anita said, I have to say it is realizing that you will never see your loved one again until you die as well.
Oh,
Yeah. At least at least at least not in the physical. I really I really feel energetically a presence that still exists, whether you want to say that's uh whatever you want to say that is. I don't really care.
yeah,
Energy is energy. Energy continues after a physical is not there anymore. It just is. That's been proven by science. And so, I think there's those very human things, though, that cannot be fulfilled by energy.
yeah,
um the physical touch, the smell of those cookies cooking in the kitchen, um the feeling that you get when you give a hug and you feel the stubble on the face.
yeah,
Those are things that cannot be replicated outside of the very human physical experience.
yeah, yeah. That's me. It's the
Yeah.
humanness. It's the humanness of my dad that I miss the most. Is that
Mm.
humanness, and you know the smells, the the incense. When I burn the incense, like that's all connected to
Mhm.
his humanness. The
Yeah.
music is connected to his humanness, and so you know, again, reflecting back on what I made make it mean about myself, about my worth, self-worth, and self-value, is also mixed with resentment and regret.
Mhm.
And to
Yeah.
and to and to settle that in my heart that I don't have any of that. I think for me that's the biggest accomplishment out of all of it is is letting go of what the definition of defining what resentment and regret meant to me, and then how that defines how I make grief means about me and him
Right.
as well.
I would
So
let anybody out there that's watching right now, I would love for you to go to the comments and let us know if you have ever experienced resentment and or regret along with the grief,
yeah.
because I think that that is a very, very real thing. I want to, before I go back to the other Facebook one, some of our comments here tonight. Cheryl said, Parkinson's has taken a lot from me. I feel I have grief over that. I can no
Mhm.
longer sing or play music. Oh, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Life in general has taken so much from me. It's like I've been grieving all my life.
And that's sure that's that power of that affliction and understanding that we're not alone in that. Like
Mm,
everybody experiences some type of an affliction, whether it's your health or whether it's the present of life and dealing with all the chaos about life itself, or the environment. People who live in, we talk about homeless and children who live in these, deprived type of areas. That is also an affliction,
yeah,
and so we all as human beings deal with it. The label of it is the affliction, but when you peel it off and examine yourself up against that conversation, that's a part of the human condition. I
yeah,
believe it's just a part of what it is to be human. And I've had friends who didn't have any health issues at all, and then health issues showed up, and it was like devastating for them. It's like
right.
no one escapes. There's some things that we live in as human beings, as our condition, that we live in denial. We just live in a level of denial, and unfortunately, when that reality happens, or we experience that condition of what it is to be human, but like I'm shocked.
Yeah,
But the sense that we all deal with something, that to me also gave me some peace. Even with my sickle cell trait, when I found that there are 300 million people with this trait, And I've met people who experienced what I experienced and collapsing and almost dying, and people have died. And it's like, wait a minute, it's not just me. Like there's something about this. And when I found my peace in God, it was understanding because He talks about it in the Bible about afflictions, and they draw us near to Him. The world has its view about it, but what does your spiritual peace say about affliction? And I'm sure it's something that's encouraging.
Yeah, I think and and when we talk, I know that there's some of you that are new on the show here tonight. When we're talking about um spirituality, it's spirituality in general. We are not
Yeah.
talking about a
For you, yeah.
specific religious, what spirituality means to you. And so Brittany said, grief to me is an emotional process response that is a loss of something. It is something that all humans can relate to because we can literally grieve over anything.
Oh, we can. Especially United fans.
Some of y'all were grieving on Sunday. Okay. Just a little, we just had to have a little interjection there. Danielle said, when my dad passed, I questioned everything. And that's what I mean. Like, it's like, that was so my experience, Danielle, was like that, just like everything. It's like a hyper focus that happens or something.
You get a reality check. And I don't know what it is. Like my grandmother passed, it took me 10 years to deal with her passing. But my dad was, maybe because it was my father and not my, like maybe the different levels of it can have you question. Because I didn't question much with my grandmother, but my dad, I questioned I questioned it all.
Yeah. Hold on to that, because I want to dig further into that after we go to break, for sure, because I think that's a good, like, what actually impacts the level of grief and whatnot that we're feeling. Sure. Eyes wide open 360 said energy doesn't die. That's what we were talking about. But it's that physical, that very physical thing that I think is the challenge for many of us. Yeah. Angela said, I have heard someone describe it as displaced love, an unconditional love that has nowhere to go. To me, grief is life.
I got you. Yeah. I got you. Oh, yeah.
To me, grief is a life altering, personal changing loss that you feel to the depths of your soul. Grief engulfs you, then changes you, then moves through you. And then one day, I think grief will empower you. Grief has made me rethink life, has brought out emotions that I didn't even know I had: fear, anger, self-doubt, and is a roller coaster of ebb and flow. There are different types of grief, different depths of grief, and not one experience is like the other completely.
Yeah. That displaced, wow, you got my nose running. That displaced love that she talked about. My dad dies. My grandson is on the way. He was at the baby shower. And then my dad dies. And then 2 weeks later, my grandson is born. Talk about displaced love. And it was like, now he's gone. And now I have this grandson now I'm the grandfather. And now redirecting that grief all at the same time and giving it love to my grandson. Like, you talk about a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And some people in the world, they say, one leaves and one comes in. And to me, that's what happened. I don't know what it means, but that displaced love that I had from my dad, I was able to filter it and give it to the love for my grandson. Yeah. And truly, he has gotten all of the love. And I definitely I don't want to say I use him, but he's definitely that blessing for that displaced love, that I get to give that displaced love and filter it to him. So yeah, she's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
You gotta find something to do with that love.
Right. That filtering of that energy is definitely something that will tie into our topic for week 4 as well, because that's been such a huge thing for me, is that realization of the choice we have on where that energy goes. On the same lines, John Super commented, which she's going to be an upcoming guest in March on the Breakthrough Show. Y'all want to hear a powerful story? She lives with narcolepsy and really has an incredible story. But she commented, "This is my favorite definition. I adopted this over a year ago now, and it's helped me so much." And this is a quote from Jamie Anderson. It says, it's similar to what Angela said. Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot. All that unspent love gathers up in the corner of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and that hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a different perspective. That's a different perception. That's a good way to stand from, right? And then to look out to where can you now give that love. I know some people, I even thought about, when my dad passed and his health conditions that he had, taking that love for him and giving it to that cause, right? Giving my voice to keep his life alive in those conversations of his illnesses too. So that's one way, that we can redirect that love, is maybe, a lot of parents do that when they lose their children, whatever that illness or disease is. A lot of them create foundations and they become speakers, and they keep that life alive in their conversation with other people. So that's definitely, I like that one way to redirect that love.
Absolutely. I want to dig a little bit more into that, along with some other things. We're going to take a really quick break here. Let y'all get some tissues, get some water.
I need to go get some
tissues, water, a deep breath, whatever you need to do. And we're going to be right back after this. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh, man, that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. Do you know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org.
Welcome back to Beyond 2D Season 2 premiere this evening, as we start to dive deep down the rabbit hole of grief. Tonight, we're talking about the first part, which is defining grief. We've looked at the textbook definition. We have taken some comments from others about what grief means to them. I also want to say thank you to Jessica Trusky, Leo Anthony, and Patricia Grimes for chiming in and talking about sadness, deep pain, and the loss of a parent as well. So thank you so much for sharing those moments with me in the comments this morning. I'd like to ask you to share what your if someone just said to you randomly, not that we've already just spent 40 minutes talking about it, randomly, what is your definition of grief? What are you saying to them?
You know, my definition of grief is the experience of losing someone that you care about or something. Like, just, I don't even know how to put it in words, because it goes to, for me, it goes to so many different directions. But just it's that loss. It's just that experience of a loss.
Yeah.
It's just an experience of a loss. Whether you, I mean, I've had cars that I was in love with my cars, and like had to get rid of the car. It was like, you know, I got rid of my 370Z, and I see Z's I see a Z pass by, and I experience this loss of like, why did I get rid of my car? Like,
listen, he's still deep in that grief. Don't let him fool you, because I see these posts on Facebook.
So yeah, it's so many different aspects that it attaches itself to.
Yeah.
But that's why I believe with shows like this, we can separate what really is grief and what really is something else that we label it grief. So yeah, it's loss.
Danielle said, I have no words to explain what grief
That's where
means.
I'm at. That's where I'm at with you, Danielle.
Yeah.
I'm like, which direction you want to go with it? I can go in all 10 different directions with grief.
Yeah, because even as I think about, like, you know, the differences between different types of grief, whether it's a person that died, a person that's still here but that relationship doesn't exist anymore, whether it's a thing, all of these different things that we're talking about, or even two different like deaths that, like, just that those experiences are wildly different. And I think so, like, I am at a place now for me where so much of my being, and we like to talk about that on this show, so much of my being where it relates to grief is on the part 4 of the story for me, because that's just where I'm at. Even if someone I know were to die right now in this moment, I'm still at that part 4. It's not to say when you have processed grief, it's not to say that you're not going to have those moments where waves wash over you. I had a moment before this show. Farron was on a call, and sometimes before my show, which again will be a story for a later date, I listened to Don't Stop Believing by Journey, because that was my brother's song, and I have a moment with him, in especially with this topic. I wanted that energy to be here with me, and so I had a moment with that before the show, but I still, you know, I still feel like I'm at a place with grief where it actually, like, I want to say it feels good, but that doesn't mean it's not hard, and it doesn't mean it doesn't really suck sometimes.
Yeah.
But it also feels good, because I feel like I'm able to honor things. When we were talking about before break, we were talking about the redirection of energy, and what our focus is. That has been a very, very recent awareness for me. I think I automatically did that when my brother died. Like, I was starting to, like, organize I organize a thing every year where we all wear black and yellow and we do a random act of kindness in honor of my brother, and I already was like, boots on the ground, let's go. like let's figure it out. And so I sort of went into that, but I wasn't really like hyper aware of my ability to transmute the energy into something that is productive and feels joyful and all of those things, until I lost a friend at the end of last year, not by death, but that's still here. And in that, I realized the longer I sit here, be all upset about this, the less energy I am spending on the people.
Oh, yeah, that's
ones that are still here.
That's the other side of that conversation that we need to discuss at some point. That's the other part of that, getting, and I believe again that's connected to that resentment and regret.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that resentment and regret goes back to what you make it mean about you, and then now you're in the midst of that emotional suffering, and then now the people around you are suffering. And I didn't know that it took me 2.5 years to realize that I had damaged some friendships, and I had separated myself from people because I like closed that off. I still had school, I had TV broadcasting school, I still had radio shows, so it was like, but in the midst of doing those things, the emotional part of that was I killed off some friendships. I killed off some relationships. I treated people, and again, if I would have walked away, I'm sure my friends and family would have been like, well, no wonder his dad died. Like that's what people do. Some people just close off and they just go shut down. And I'm sure nobody would have been surprised if I became a hermit or whatever, we label people who, shut down when they lose that loved one or that parent or that child. But that's a natural reaction. But the ability to catch that, I'm glad I caught it in 2.5 years because when I recognized it, I was like, oh my gosh, look at who I have been being with people.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, okay, I gotta clean that up. Like I gotta clean it up because that's not who I am. And I had gotten to the point for myself of my own mental health issues, my own anxieties, my own depressions, my own fears of dying from that sickle cell trait and understanding all of that. And then my dad. And it was like, just as I got comfortable and cool with myself, now here's another. It's like, oh, like, I can't catch a break. But as long as I connected those dots, it's like, then you're going to get stuck. Sometimes, for me, I have to separate my grandmother's death, my grandfather's death, my dad. Like, they're not connected.
Yeah.
But if you connect them and you string them along together, can you imagine the emotional? That's like putting on a jacket that you put on and made with all the grief, and you're wearing it like a jacket. Because as human beings, we connect those dots. Sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes it's emotionally it's not a good thing. And we connect everything, and then you put it on, and it's like this weight. And it's like, but those are my emotions, those are my feelings. Let me sit with my grandmother's passing. Let me sit with my dad when those emotions come up. I had to learn how to just be with them. And I believe that sometimes we feel bad when we don't grieve for that loved one. Right?
Yeah.
There's a point that I had to learn for myself in my personal development that I experienced missing my dad. I had to stop saying I miss him. Because if I kept saying I miss him, I'm putting on that jacket of missing my dad, and then I'm walking around with that. But guess what? There's some days I don't miss my dad. Yeah. There's some moments in time that I don't grieve for him. And that's when I have to get back to my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Back on season 4 of the Breakthrough Show, I had Dee Wallace on the show. You guys might know her as the mom from E.T. or the mom from Cujo, or she's America's scream queen. All right. She's the scream queen. Other than being an absolutely amazing actress, she is a very, very spiritual woman. That's why she came on the show to talk about her spiritual awakening and all of that. And we got into a conversation about grief on the show. And we were talking about specifically what you're speaking of, which is how sometimes we get caught up in grief. And I think what when this is what I brought up to her, that somehow subconsciously we feel like if we go on with our lives and we go on living and having a good day and laughing and spending the energy on those that are still here and everything else, that is somehow dishonoring them. And I remember Dee got all up in the camera like a star should. And you go back and watch this and y'all think I'm wrong. She got up in the camera and she said, that's honoring them.
Yes.
It's honoring them to live, and to spend the time that they have not been gifted with. And I will never forget that moment, because there were so many moments up until like for the longest time that I was doing just that. I was getting caught up instead of going, like they're not here. We should, and there's a lot of shoulds around grief. We should be upset. We should be crying, as much as we hear the opposite. You should be over it. You should be moved on by now. And we'll talk about that in the support week for sure. That's like number one. Number one. Okay.
The should world.
Yeah, the should world. There's a lot of shoulding that happens. But yeah, like, I think if we can understand some of these background thoughts that we have in our subconscious surrounding grief, we can start to go, okay, maybe I need to start to define what this looks like for me. Maybe not be able, like it's hard to say in words, Danielle, right? It's hard to say in words, but we can start to define how we feel about life about grief by how we're being.
And I had to change how I talked about my dad's passing. I of course I catch myself saying I miss my dad, but I know in my heart, my subconscious mind, what's in my heart now is I experience missing him. And there are days that I don't. The days that I experience missing him, I got to go put on some Sade. I got to go put on some old school funk, some Strawberry Letter 23, some Brothers Johnston. Like, I got to go be with that emotion because it's there. And I don't want to suppress it and push it down and act like I don't feel what I feel. So I go be with whatever I need to do. If I got to go cry, I go cry. I think about him. I go and be with, if it lasts 15 minutes, if it lasts an hour, if it lasts a day, like I have to go and be with that emotion. So when it passes, I'm okay. I'm not carrying it. So I say I experience missing my dad. And when I do, I go be with that experience. And then I get back to whatever I'm up to in life. And so how you talk is really what's coming out of your heart. Because your subconscious mind is going to tell you what you should already feel and think. And then you're reacting to it and spitting it out of your mouth. But you can catch that thought first. And be like, oh, wait, I'm not going to, okay, let me go be with that right now. And it's not wrong that you get to go back and be about your life. Like I said, when my grandson came, it's now my turn. Now I'm the grandfather.
Yeah.
My turn. It's my turn now. So what will my dad know? And I hear my dad's voice. And this is another thing. I believe that when that loved one is gone, we start to hear their conversations to us. And I hear, when I talk to my grandson, or even when I'm just sitting around talking, I hear my dad's words. I hear his voice. Like, it sounds like him coming out of I'm like, that's not even me. Like, that's what my dad would say in that moment, in that tone. And if you're not settled with that relationship with that person, those also could be things that come up in our experience of ourselves and that loved one or that friend. That's also another layer of antagonizing, right? Another layer of whatever that is for you. And I just had to start embracing that I talk like my dad, and sometimes that's his voice that I hear. And I'm saying those words to my grandson, but that's really my dad's words. It's like not even my words. Yep. It's like what he would say to him in that moment. And it's beautiful.
Yep.
It's beautiful because it's my turn.
It's your turn.
I'm the grandfather now.
I think, as you were talking about it being your turn, I was thinking about in sports, or when I would be in choir and things like that growing up, and you know it's your turn to bat or it's your turn to sing the solo, and if you got up there and it's your turn to bat or your turn to sing the solo and you couldn't think of anything but the other people on the bench and in the audience and everything else, how well do you think you could focus on what it's your turn to do?
Like an echo, yoo-hoo.
How well can you focus on what it's your turn to do? Doesn't mean that they're not there. Doesn't mean you don't have that energetic support. It doesn't mean that they don't exist. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means like it's your turn. It's time. And we'll dig in more of that coming up here next week. We're gonna be Daniel's at boom. There it went. Home run. Okay. Love it. So next week we're going to be talking about the stages of grief. Are you familiar with like the textbook stages of grief, Farron?
Oh yeah, I actually took the VA offered grievance classes. So when my dad passed in May, I was still in TV broadcasting school. And so I went to the VA for an appointment, and the psychiatrist said, "Hey, I believe they have a grievance course at the VA." I'm like, "Sign me up," because I understand principles. And if I learned personal development principles and I've learned biblical principles, then I know that grievance class is going to give me some principles to be used by.
Yeah. So
that I'm not living 15 years from now talking about I miss my dad and it's 15 years. Like I didn't want to be that guy. Yeah. And so I took those grievance classes and talk about, I'll say this, 5 of us started. I was the last one in the class.
Wow.
Because the other guys, the other soldiers dropped out. They couldn't, whatever it was for them. I was the last one in the class. And he was like, "You sure you want to come?" I'm like, I'm coming for all of it, buddy. I need this work. And so it would just be me and him in the grievance class until the last day.
Yeah.
It takes a lot.
What you're saying though there, and I want to point this out, and I am giving you a high five, virtual hug, all those things, about the fact that you chose to be like, I need this. I need this in my life where I'm at with grief. And so what I want to encourage you guys to do over the next 4 episodes, obviously thank you so much to everybody who was Cheryl, Danielle, Brittany, Eyes Wide Open, a whole bunch of people in the comments tonight. Thank you to everybody who chimed in earlier on my Facebook as well. We appreciate your interaction, but I also want to encourage you, even if you don't feel like showing up, if you're watching this on the replay and you're like, I'm not being a part of this. This is not what we're doing. I want to encourage you to show up anyway. You don't have to comment. If this is too much, you can get your tissue box and your Ben and Jerry's and you can curl up in the bed and turn us on the phone or whatever. But just show up because sometimes it's one little thing that we hear that makes us go, oh. Like it could be the one thing that allows you to swim with grief instead of drowning in it. You don't have to drown in it. And that's the one thing, like I really want that. That's my core message for this whole series, is that you don't have to drown in it. And we're going to talk about the stages of grief. I'm going to talk about how I think the stages of grief are crap next episode. But not necessarily completely trash, but we're going to talk about why I would go there in the next episode.
Next episode,
Dr. Dre. Okay. And then, like I said, so the next episode is going to be in 2 Tuesdays. We're the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month. So February 27th is when we're talking about stages of grief. And then March 12th, mark it down, is when we're talking about grief support and also how you can be a good support during grief. We'll talk about that as well. And then Tuesday, the March 26th, is when we're going to be talking about that power. That's going to be the powerful transforming grief into growth. That's going to be your take it home.
Before we get out of here, I want to say my last piece of this is tell the truth to yourself. When you look up these definitions of grief and loss and death, and tell the truth to yourself, because it'll help you maybe discover your old belief about what loss is or grief is, and that'll allow you to create a new relationship to death. I had to do that. I had to get a new relationship to death for myself, but also for my loved ones, and this advocacy of community that I work with that have sickle cell disease. That I've lost a lot of friends that have died in this advocacy work of 13 years, from my mentor all the way down to my close friends that I advocated with. And I had to go and I had to get a new relationship to death that gave me strength. It gave me peace. It gave me comfort. Like you can do that. You can be that kind of person. That those old ways of being may not work today, who you are today. So the human brain is malleable. We can learn, we can grow, we can develop, we can create. You create breakfast every day. You create dinner. We can create new ways to be, but you've got to be willing to do the work and willing to tell the truth. And you'll discover, like, oh, like she said, oh, that might be a new way to look at this from now, and then practice that new way. So when that old way shows up, oh yeah, but I learned this, and now you can add that to that conscious mind, subconscious mind, by practicing the new way of being. And guess what? Now I could go either way. Like, I know what's still in my subconscious mind, but I put new information. I put those grieving classes in there. So now I have more stuff to pull from than just how Farron used to think about loss and grief. So just tell the truth to yourself, if no one else.
That's it. Cheryl was saying that's my problem. I drown myself in it. And that's what listen, there's no shame in any of this conversation. And I want to end every single one of these episodes with telling all of you guys that if you feel like you absolutely cannot with life, you cannot function because of grief, please reach out for help. If you don't know where to reach out, you can always message one of us and we will give you a resource. We will tell you where to call your doctor, call a counselor, call somebody and reach out for help, please, because I'm watching it real time. I'm coming to you from not just the education of being a leader in this space, but also my own experience. I'm watching in real time the drowning happening with people that I love, and you got to reach out for help. So I encourage you to do that. And if you don't know where to reach out, like I said, if you know Farron or I, please feel free we can drop you a resource of some kind. Okay.
That reaching out takes a level of confidence and courage. And if you have that in one area of your life, you can have confidence and courage in this area called grief. You can apply that same confidence and courage that you have in that other aspect of your life. For sure.
That was the mic drop moment, boys and girls. Was that? Farron, School, good to be back with you.
I know, it's been a few months.
I know. No more vacations. It makes me
no
so
more. Maybe the next subject.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll be back in 2 weeks for episode 2, season 2. There's lots of 2s happening there. And it's the month 2. Okay, this is getting weird. I love you guys so much. And we'll remind you, allow yourself to fall down the rabbit hole with us every other Tuesday here, and continue to explore this topic of grief. And we will see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.